Drunk driver smashes into wedding car. Police look into wreckage and see horrific discovery. Every day, unthinkable tragedies shatter the lives of many families. Now, some of those families are coming forward to share their difficult stories in hopes that what has happened to them won't happen to you. For Lisa and David, July 2, 2005 began as a perfect wedding day. More than 200 close friends and relatives gathered on the beach. Lisa's fondest memory of the day was of her nieces, 5-year-old Grace and 7-year-old Katie, dressed like princesses, throwing rocks into the Long Island Sound. Katie was also Lisa's goddaughter. Being her godmother and her being my flower girl, it was just so special to Katie, Lisa says.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
After a day full of celebration, Lisa's parents, Christopher and Denise, along with her sister Jennifer, Jennifer's husband Neil, and their daughters Grace and Katie, all headed home in a limousine. I remember looking in on the limo and seeing Kate and waving goodbye, and she waved goodbye, and never thought that was going to be that type of moment where you're seeing people for the last time, says David, the groom. It's, I guess, a moment I see every day. On the ride home, the limo was struck head-on by a drunk driver. Police reports indicate the driver, 24-year-old Martin Hagen, had at least 14 drinks and his blood alcohol level was more than 3 times the legal limit. Police say he was driving 70 miles an hour down the wrong side of a major highway for at least 2 miles before he crashed into the limousine. An off-duty security officer returning home from work was first on the scene. I approached the limo driver and I guess I went into shock at that time, says New York State Court Officer Michael Lorardi. It looked like an explosion. The motor basically was just sitting on top of him. I knew he was dead. The limo driver, 59-year-old Stanley Rabinowitz, was killed instantly. Next to arrive was Lieutenant Michael Tangney, the bride's uncle, who had attended the wedding just hours before. I was walking to the rear of the limousine when a gentleman was coming away from it and he said, "Don't go back there, it's bad," Lieutenant Tangney says. I opened the rear door to the limousine and realized it was my family. Lieutenant Tangney's brother, Jennifer's father Chris, was laying on the floor, his legs wrapped around the service bar, broken in numerous places. The rest of the family was piled on top of each other. Jennifer's mother, Denise, was severely injured, as was Jennifer's husband, Neil, who tried to crawl out of the limo to get help despite his broken back. 5-year-old Grace was also trapped inside the wreckage. Jennifer, whose foot was injured, managed to climb out and was searching for Katie, who had been lying on the side seat before the crash. We couldn't find Kate, Lieutenant Tangney says. Then Jennifer made a devastating discovery. Katie had been decapitated by her seatbelt. Then all of a sudden, Mrs. Flynn came out of the car with her child's head in her hand, says Michael Lorardi, one of the 70 paramedics and police officers who were called to the scene. I got numb. I thought I was going to collapse. All she was holding was this kid's head, says Officer Christopher Pandolfo. I looked into the back of the limousine and I saw Katie's remains. She was wearing this dress, and I just started shaking. Jennifer walked to the side of the road and sat for about an hour with her daughter's head on her lap as she watched her family being cut out of the limousine. Lieutenant Tangney had to tell his niece it was time to leave. She very lucidly, very calmly said she wasn't going anywhere. She wasn't leaving Kate, he says. I climbed into the ambulance and I told Jennifer that she'd have to come inside now because Grace needed her, and she said she's not going to let go of Kate. And I asked her if she would give her to me, and at that point she turned her over, kissed her goodbye, and handed her to me. The accident took the lives of Katie and Stanley and left the rest of the family severely injured, physically and emotionally. Now Jennifer and Neil are sharing their story. Because no one should live the life that I live, I felt a responsibility, an obligation to come and to tell our story, Jennifer says. I hope that by knowing the devastation that we lived through that night and still continue to live through, hopefully people are able to see and view the crime of drunk driving as it should be seen and viewed, and that hopefully will save lives. Jennifer says her back was to the windshield when the crash occurred. She was holding her daughter Grace, and Katie was lying down on the side seat of the limo with her seatbelt on. Jennifer says she felt a sense of calm at the scene, although others told her she had been screaming. I wasn't worried for Kate because I do believe she's in heaven, she says. At the time, I was more worried for us. I never ever thought that Neil and I would be able to live without her. As her family was extracted from the wreckage, Jennifer says she sat at the side of the road with Kate's severed head and watched the scene for an hour. I didn't want to leave without the rest of my family, she says. Neil, who had broken his back, tried to crawl out of the limo. I heard my wife screaming, "Katie's dead!" and I didn't want to accept it, so I screamed back, "No, she's just hurt real bad," he says. I didn't know what Jen knew then. Jennifer's sister Lisa and brother-in-law David continue to suffer feelings of guilt, even after making every effort to ensure no one would drink and drive after their wedding. We planned better than most would plan. We had a bus to take people back and forth from the hotel to the reception, David says. We had a whole slew of rooms for people to stay in. We had limousines for parents and family, and that wasn't enough. Lisa says she feels guilt about everything. We had it on the 4th of July weekend. If you look at the statistics, that's DWI season, she says. Would this have happened if it wasn't on such a big night? Maybe not. Those are the decisions that ultimately killed my family. How do we start a life when your start is death? Lisa asks. It's your wedding day, and now they don't have their child. Jennifer says the time has passed in a blur since Katie's death. I can't imagine I'm going to live maybe another 40 years without her, she says. Neil says he wanted to die the night of the accident, and he has often thought of suicide. I'd take it now if I didn't have more children. Life's terrible. It's miserable. The good part's over. That was when we had all our kids, he said. We were a family. Now we're stuck. We're just struggling through for the good of our 3 other children. Every day is a struggle, Neil and Jennifer say. Everything I see my children do, I think Kate should be doing. Everything I know they're going to do, I know Kate won't do, he says. Every time you wake up, you say to yourself, this is terrible. I went another day without her, you know? Or I have to face another day without her. And every night when I go to sleep, I made it through another day, and I know it's not going to get any better as long as I'm awake. The accident has changed their marriage, Jennifer says. The old Jennifer, when Neil would come home from work, might ask, "How was your day? What's going on?" And now I don't care. And you don't want to be that way, she says. What follows what happened to us? Denise and Chris, Jennifer's parents, were also severely injured in the crash. Chris, a respected police officer, had to have his leg amputated. Still, the emotional wounds run deeper. They say the accident destroyed their once close-knit family. We struggle to be a family that celebrates holidays together, Denise says. As a respected police officer, Chris says he's seen drunk drivers and pulled them over, but he never thought drunk driving could affect his family. It really never occurred to me that this could happen to me. I hate to be naive. I know it happens, he says. But that night when we were driving home on the parkway, Denise and I were looking out the window and we saw the car coming at us. Limo driver Stanley Rabinowitz was also killed by this drunk driver. Ironically, Stanley was known to give drunk drivers free limo rides home during his 8.5 years as a driver. His 2 sons, Keith and Nolan, still grieve the death of their dad. He was always proud of me and Nolan, no matter what, Keith says. Most of his happiness came from us and watching us grow up. Less than 2 years after Stanley's death, his first grandchild was born and named in his honor. I put the picture of Dad with Stanley because I just wanted the first images that my son saw to be his grandfather, Keith says. It saddens me to think that my father won't experience having grandkids because I know that he was really looking forward to it, Nolan says. But at the same time, I know what kind of father I want to be now. On July 14, 2005, Martin Hagen was charged with the second-degree murders of Stanley Rabinowitz and Katie Flynn. His trial began 1 year after the accident. After 5 days of jury deliberations, Martin Hagen was convicted on 2 counts of second-degree murder and related charges. He's serving his 18-year sentence at a correctional center in New York and is now appealing his case. Jennifer hopes the verdict will demonstrate that not all drunk driving charges can be treated the same. The way the jury deliberated over it, I think for people, they don't want to think of drunk driving as murder, she says. So I think that that's something that we hope, that you don't have to lump all drunk driving into one charge. There is the extraordinarily reckless drunk driving which happened to us. Now that the trial is over, Jennifer and Neil say they are still stunned by what happened to their family. Just the sheer disbelief that it happened to me, Jennifer says. I can't believe this is our life. Although Neil sought counseling after the crash, he says the absence of his daughter is something counseling can't address. I'm here. This is what I have to deal with, and I will. But like I said, the good part's over, he says. We had our plan. We decided we were going to have 4 kids, and that was what we were going to do, and we were set. We were fine. And like I said, that 5-second smash defined my life. Jennifer says she and Neil are active parents to their 3 other children. We continue to do a ton with the children that live, even more because of that. But there is that feeling that when they do something, you do wish Kate was there to enjoy it as well, she says. So we do try and we are there, but to see them do stuff, one is the artist, one is this, one is that. The personalities bounce off of each other. So to not have Kate's there, it always seems like she's missing. And it's hard. As much as you're doing it and you're there, it's palpable. It's hard not to feel it. In November 2006, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD, launched a new campaign to eliminate drunk driving within the next 10 years. Part of their goal is for all states to require mandatory ignition interlock devices, which have been shown to be up to 90% effective in keeping repeat drunk drivers off the roads. Before a driver with a prior DUI can start a car with this device, they must blow into a device that measures their blood alcohol level. If alcohol is detected, the car will not start. Currently, only 4 states require this device for all first-time offenders: New Mexico, Arizona, Louisiana, and Illinois. MAD says 4,000 lives would be saved every year if it were required in every state. To learn more about MAD's campaign to eliminate drunk driving, visit mad.org. What does Jennifer think of the idea? I think that's great for the repeat offenders. But I think that for drunk driving to be curbed, that it needs to hurt if you were to get caught drunk driving, she says. So I think that for even the lesser or the first-time offender, it should be the fine with the license, with the community service, with going to a class. Ultimately, Jennifer believes people need to know that all actions have repercussions. Actions have consequences, and I think everyone needs to know that and recognize it. And it doesn't make us bad people for not wanting to live in a world of chaos, she says. If you're going to commit the crime, you're going to get in trouble, and it should be that way. We should all want that.
If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.